So next on stage, the last speaker of this half is, I think, probably the one I'm looking forward to the most. I've got no idea how he did what he did, but he's going to explain all now. Sean.
Every challenge will always have a different aspect of physical and mental endurance. When you don't know how bad it's going to be, then you don't get overwhelmed by it. This is by far the toughest challenge I've ever done, by a long way. Not only hadn't it been done, no one's even attempted it. When those waves pick up and they can come out of nowhere, you really are at the mercy of the elements. There's a lot of people who were like, this can't be done, you're going to die trying, and I thought, right, I'm going to prove to myself and to everyone else that it is possible.
Right, thank you for having me, everyone. People always ask me why I decided to swim the length of Britain, and I can't remember the exact moment, to be honest, but two things happened. My friend Dave Conway was swimming down the Missouri, putting loads of photos on Facebook. I thought, oh, swimming's quite cool. I can't really swim, but that sounds like a fun adventure. And at the time, I was also writing my Land's End to John O'Groats cycle book. And I thought, oh, maybe I could swim Land's End to John O'Groats. Surely that's been done, right? That same mate of mine, Dave, has actually skateboarded it. It's been done a million different ways. I thought, hardest swims have been done in the world. I'll email the guy or the girl who did it before me, get some advice, and have a great old British adventure up the coastline. So I went online, did some research, and it turns out that no one had ever even attempted a length of Britain swim. Except one guy, actually, I thought it was quite cool. A guy put a swimming pool on the back of a van and did laps as they drove it. I thought it was awesome. I mean, that's so British and amazing. So anyway, I thought, right, I'm going to give this a go. So my initial inspiration was, I guess, to get my confidence back. Some of you may or may not know I went for the world record for around the world cycling in 2012. I got run over and fractured my spine, and that put a real dampener on my motivation and on my life, and I was a bit depressed after that. So I was looking for a new challenge just to push myself. That was the initial idea, but then I eventually was putting things on forums and blogs online, and soon found out that actually I was getting a lot of negativity. A lot of people were putting things online going, oh, you can't do it, you're going to get eaten by a killer whale, which I actually didn't even know existed in this country. You're going to get sucked into a whirlpool and end up in Australia. There's massive waves, big currents. But if anything, that kind of gave me fuel to carry on. And I eventually, on the 30th of June, which was just over a year ago, I stood at Land's End in a wetsuit overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, which was going to be my home for the next 2.5 months, I thought. It took a bit longer. And the thing that kept going through my mind is, you have not thought this through at all. At this point, I still hadn't swum in the sea once. I live in Cheltenham. The nearest ocean is like a 2.5 hour, I know. Honestly, I'm now knowing, I think I know why all those blogs were dissing me. But anyway, I stood there, and in all my research, I knew this swim was possible. And although I was getting a lot of negativity, no one would fund the swim. It was hard to find crew. It was hard to get kit together, everything. I had to self-fund. It was really difficult getting to the start line. And this is literally, if the age-old saying is getting to the start line is the hardest point, and this was by far it. I couldn't do this swim alone, though, and I needed a crew. Finding a crew was difficult. I tried to find a skipper to skipper a yacht. Turns out most people who can sail a yacht have a yacht and have better things to do than follow swimming a mile an hour. But eventually I found my mate Jez, Crazy Jez. He's a hoarder. This is what he had looked like after every beach session. He lived on a barge, so, he'll do. To be honest, I didn't really have much other choice for a skipper. I then needed someone to take photos and capture it. I wanted to share it on social media. It's the best thing about doing a British adventure is everyone's awake when you're awake, and you can share it and have a bit of fun. Found Crazy Owen, who had been on a ferry once, so I thought he'd do. I then needed someone in a kayak next to me. I did the cheese rolling in Gloucester a few years ago, dislocated my shoulder, so I keep swimming off to the left really quickly, so I needed a kayak next to me. So I found Em who had never kayaked in her life, but she had supported Dave, my mate Dave, who went down the Missouri. She had supported him on his swimming adventure. I thought, oh, that's brilliant. You'll be fine. because you know something about swimming adventures. And the last crew member, and probably the most important, was Friday, our boat, Friday Weil. I had £4,000. There's one credit card I managed to dupe Lloyd's into giving me to buy a yacht. Seriously, £4,000 to buy a yacht. I actually, and this is not a joke, I bought this yacht on the eBay app in a pub. It was £3,800. I hadn't even seen it, but it was the closest thing I could afford, to be honest. 26 foot, no hot water, no running water. You can see that was the living conditions. 26 foot is actually smaller than most sort of Atlantic rowing boats. It was tiny. But what we all lacked in skill, you know, I knew how to swim. You know, it wasn't as if I was learning from scratch. I had to swim at school, you know. So that was good. Yeah, I did it 20 years ago. It's all good. But we made up for it in this determination that actually this swim was possible. Nothing suggested it wasn't possible. And the new goal became proving to people and everyone that actually I could make this swim happen. And as a team, we could make it happen. So it was amazing. I set off swimming. We had amazing high pressures for the first few weeks in July last year. Going up Cornwall was brilliant. That first day at sea, I remember, was absolutely horrendous. We did 1 mile because we were all seasick. Except Jez, I'll give him that. But literally, I was throwing up overboard. This is Em in a bucket. Owen was throwing up in the toilet. And it was a really difficult moment. And there's one rule in expeditions and adventures. If someone's in trouble, you should always take a photo first. Because, you know, you can always show them a bit later. But it turns out getting your sea legs is an actual thing. You can take pills. And we carried on the next day, making my way up the Cornish coast. And it was an incredible experience. The way the tides work in the UK is you've got 6 hours of tide that runs from south to north, and then it turns and 6 hours runs down. And during those down tides, or the southerly tides, I couldn't swim. It was too strong for me to swim against. So I had forced exploration time. So I'd go ashore. You can see the boats in the background there. There's a little rib. We'd go to shore and explore the British coastline. And it was exactly what I wanted it to be. Not just this hardcore swim. I wanted it to be an exploration adventure as well. And it was turning out exactly how I wanted it. You can see the conditions were amazing for those first few weeks. This is me getting ready to jump overboard into the sea. Loads of sunshine. In the evenings, we'd camp on the shore, cook all the fish we had caught. You can see Friday Weil in the background there. And this beach is normally a surfing beach. It was crazy. We anchored on Newquay Beach. All the surfers are like, are you kidding me? Like, we had such good weather. And exploring these beaches that you can only access from the sea only when the conditions are good enough were amazing. You know, not many people get to do that. And it was such a great experience working my way up. So this is just swimming up, carrying on along the coastline. Eventually made it up to the corner of Devon, swam across to Wales. It looks like a big crossing, but actually you can just see a little island there called Lundy Island, which pirates used to occupy back in the day. And I think 23 people live on it now. But it acted as a little hop-over point to get to and from Wales. Got to Wales, just done a sort of semi-crossing. The plan was to go up Wales, cross to the Isle of Man, to Scotland. And this is when our plans changed, really just sort of sitting in the pub, actually, where all good ideas happen. We're on the iPad, zooming around, and we saw a bit of land off to the west, and we thought, oh, is that another island? And we zoomed out, and it was island, actual island. And we all looked at each other, and we thought, how cool would it be if I swam to Ireland? And Em was like, I've never been to Ireland, I can kayak. And Owen had also never been to Ireland. Can you believe it? In their 30s, they'd never been to Ireland. So Owen was like, well, I could, you know, my first experience in Ireland would be sailing. Em was like kayaking. I was like, well, I'll swim. And literally, that was it. The next day, we headed into the sunset because it seemed like a good idea at the time. It was a very weird experience because up till now, I had land on my right. The little training I did bilateral breathing, but because of my cheese-rolling shoulder, I kept going to the left, so I kept breathing to the right. But for now, it was so weird just going into nothing and hoping that in 4 days' time, I'd find land and it would be Ireland, because we had no idea what it was going to be like. It started off quite calm, it was amazing, but the chop soon picked up, and the reason I'm showing this photo is, if you can see when I went to take my left arm stroke, my arm didn't even leave the wave as I went through, and it became really difficult to deal with that sort of sea state that was a bit bouncy.
This is exactly how I imagined the Irish Sea to be. So progress is quite slow, and whoa, that one came out of nowhere.
And that's the kind of thing that would happen. I'd be swimming along and there's just one freak wave would sort of almost topple me over sideways, and so progress became quite difficult crossing the Irish Sea. The other thing that happens in the Irish Sea, which I had know about, is they have motorways for ships, literally. So I'm like swimming across the M25 of the shipping lanes, which is 25 miles wide, which, yeah, was quite daunting. And, you know, we'd radio it into the Coast Guard. We were quite nervous as well. We're like, oh, are you allowed to swim across the sea? What are the rules? But in Britain, it's the only country in the world where anyone can go and buy any yacht. You don't need a license. You can go out and kill yourself because it's such a maritime history. And there's a brilliant saying is, the sea is free. And we definitely made the most of that as we went across. I also met my nemesis of the Irish Sea, which is in the form of lion's mane jellyfish. That kept stinging me in the face. It was really difficult to deal with. It feels just like a lighter burning you for about 6 hours. I'd get stung every single day, and I soon realized that actually the longer my beard grew, it was actually kind of shielding me from the jellyfish stings, and that's actually why I landed up growing this ridiculous beard, to shield me from jellyfish as I went along, made my way across the Irish Sea. It was also quite difficult because to make it across the Irish Sea in 4 days, that was our plan because we knew some bad weather was coming out to do night sessions. It was really stressful. You can see here I'm wearing reflective armbands. I try to cover my nose because that was the only bit, and cheeks that was getting stung by jellyfish. But it turns out it just stops you breathing, which is kind of important. So that didn't really work at all. But I was making good progress and swimming across the Irish Sea. And eventually, after 4 days, you can see that's the route I landed up taking because the tide was pushing me up and down. I eventually saw land, and it was Ireland. We were quite stoked about that. I had a Guinness, and that was it. I'd done my major crossing, right? Irish Sea, there was obviously amazing weather on Ireland as we got to the other side. But we soon realized swimming across to Ireland was the best decision I could have ever made because we were sheltered from all the waves. I think if I'd carried on swimming up Wales, I would have been hit with all those big waves from the westerlies. But when you're on the inside of Ireland, it was calm like this. It was amazing. So now I got to Ireland, I thought, right, I'm a real swimmer now. If anyone's watched Big River Man, I urge you to watch it. Martin Stroll, world's best open water swimmer, famously drinks 2 bottles of wine every single day. So I thought, I'll give it a go. So this is a typical feed in the water. I'd eat out of a bar. I thought I'd have some wine that day. I just threw it up and fed the fish. Put me firm back in my place that I'm not a real swimmer. I also made some friends in the Irish Sea in the form of seals. Seals and dolphins would swim with me every single day almost. It was an amazing experience. I put this on Twitter and all my mates were like, haha, which one's the seal? I was like, oh, thanks, guy. I was looking quite hairy by now. But it was amazing making progress up Ireland, and there's a few ferries, but they were quite far off. But again, you can see the sea state was amazing, and M next to me as I made my way up. Got to the end of Ireland, and unfortunately, that was kind of my route as I worked my way across up to Ireland. Got to Northern Ireland, ready to swim over to Scotland, and got hit with the worst news possible, and that was Jez, my original skipper, got offered a job. He got offered a job, a paid job, which is kind of annoying. But he's like, Sean, I'm really sorry, mate. I'm going to have to go, and I need to, this is a dream job for me. And, I couldn't really sit back and say, don't follow your dreams, because that's what I believe in. But it was a weird experience seeing Jez go off. I knew how hard it was to find a skipper originally. So I put things on Twitter and Facebook. Again, no one wanted to get involved. Too scared I would drown and they'd be liable. I eventually sent the crew home. I said, M&O, and you go home. I'll try and find a new skipper. It took me 10 days to find someone. Eventually, someone who was in Turkey, lived in the south coast, but she was in Turkey. Lou said, I can give you 10 days of my time, Sean. I thought that'd be brilliant. I can get over to Scotland and I can be on my home run. So Lou eventually came, found us on a beach, and Lou landed up staying 2.5 months, actually. So I owe Lou a lot, but it means I was able to carry on my adventure with having a skipper for the boat. So got to Scotland. Scotland was amazing. The scenery was incredible. But with Scotland, which I thought when we looked at it, we were convinced Google had got the proportions wrong. You know how they extend with the latitude. But actually, if you look at Scotland, it's half of the UK. If I'd known, we weren't even halfway yet. I wasn't halfway on the swim. I don't know what I would have done, but ignorance is bliss. But turns out with Scotland were all those things that people have blogged about. One of those twirly whirlpools at the bottom there is the Corrie of Ecken, 3rd biggest whirlpool in the world. You don't land up in Australia. You just don't come up ever. So it was quite difficult to navigate through all the little islands, all the chop. The currents weren't that steady. I landed up losing loads of weight again. So this is an exercise I do. I breathe in to see how much less capacity are in my organs. So, for example, you need fat around your heart, your liver, your kidneys to operate. But I'd lost all that fat, and I went down to below 10 stone, which it was really difficult because it became really cold. And with the cold, I started to get kind of frostbite, because for 5-6 hours a day, all the blood was going around my chest to keep my body warm, so my toes were going black. I went to a doctor in Scotland thinking, oh, doom and gloom, they're going to be like, you can't swim, health and safety. But the Scottish guy was literally like, you don't need it anyway. It's like, what? It's like, I kind of like my toe. He says, oh, you become a real explorer then, don't you? I'm like, this is from an NHS doctor. I thought it was brilliant. But anyway, he gave me antibiotics, and I think his nonchalant attitude gave me, the confidence to carry on and not stress about it too much. The other thing that happened I had never really thought of is the engine broke on the yacht. And if the engine broke, there's no way I could afford to buy a new engine. But it turns out Crazy Owen actually knew a thing about fixing 10 horsepower Yanmar engines in a 60-year-old boat. And it was just enough for us to get to shore, and we naturally found a guy in one of the islands, a French guy randomly, who fixed it, and we were able to carry on. But it was getting difficult. We used to call it the commute. So I'd finish swimming each day, GPS pinpoint, take the yacht to a safe anchorage in the morning, go back. And that return trip was 4 to 6 hours. So fair play to Lou and Owen for putting in all the hours while I was trying to not get seasick, swimming, kind of sleeping in between, just trying to recover from, burning 10,000 calories a day. Because by now, it was coming into October, I was really behind schedule. I was having to put in the miles and having to do a lot more night sessions. And this is kind of what it was like. We're that far offshore, probably a good 3 or 4 miles just to cut across the lock. And it was the scariest thing, just having to make progress as I was going up in the middle of the darkness. It also was now the end of October came. I was still going. My mileage dropped originally from 15 miles a day swimming, 15, 16. My biggest was about 22, down to about 8, 9, 10, because just the water was so cold. You could see it snowing in the background. 11-degree water. I was below 10 stone. I was, at this point, I had eating fatigue, flavor fatigue, where you just can't eat food. It was taking me half an hour to eat a bowl of pasta. So the crew had to start blending my meal. So I'd blended chili con carne and Lancashire hot pot, and we'd throw half a thing of butter in, and then the crew would put it in a baby bottle and be like, wah, feeding time, Sean. Kind of really annoying. I was meant to be this hardcore adventurer, but anyway. But I was still making progress, nothing was in my way. It was just taking a lot longer than I thought. And that landed up being my route, going through all the Hebrides, cutting my way up through inside of Skye, up to sort of towards Cape Wrath. And I remember as a crew, we're thinking, right, once I hit Cape Wrath, that's it. Home stretch, 5 or 6 days, cross to John O'Groats, and it's a done deal. I remember we all said, once we hit Cape Wrath, we've done it, I've done the swim. So we waited for a few good weather days, because to get around Cape Wrath, you need some really calm water. All the fishermen said, oh, don't worry, Wrath's the name of the colour of the rocks in Nordic, so we weren't too stressed. But we headed up, we found some good weather like that, but literally on the point of Cape Wrath, this massive storm came out of nowhere. It wasn't on the weather, and it nearly sank the boat. M overturned. We lost the kayak. It sank and went away. The rib overturned. We lost oars. We lost paddle, broken half. And it was a really difficult moment because we thought we had made it. The Friday, the boat started taking on water. So we limped to this little lock just on the north side of the coast of Scotland. And I remember we all sitting there going, did that just happen? Like, we're so close. And I think we had let our guard down a bit. I thought I'd done it now. So we kind of recouped. We found an amazing family who lent us a new kayak for M, and we kind of tried to make progress. But those 6 days, or 5 or 6 days, which I thought would take me to get to the end, landed up taking nearly 3 weeks. And I remember it was freezing cold. You can see the breath coming out of my mouth. Water temperature was 11, 12 degrees. Air temperature was 4, 5, 6 degrees, freezing at night. And I remember thinking, I've missed the weather window. Am I going to have to come back and finish this swim next year? And that would completely have sort of taken away the whole idea of swimming the length of Britain in one go. And it was a very difficult moment for all of us. Em and Owen and Lou and Jez had put so much of their time and effort into this as well, and they were, just as gutted as we were. And we were looking on the weather, and we were just getting no good weather days. XC weather was just red, gale force, gale force, gale force. But eventually, after 3 weeks, we had our 3-weather window, and that's all I needed, 3 good weather days to get to Thurso and then to get round to John O'Groats. I remember for those 3 days, I don't remember anything. I just swam my little legs and arms out, and eventually, after 135 days, 4.5 months at sea, I arose from John O'Groats Harbour looking like a hairy Viking after completing the world's first ever length of Britain swim. It was only a day before this moment that I truly knew I'd done it. Anything could have happened up till then. There were so many things that had gone in my way. And I knew by now there was going to be a bit of media there, and I'd had so much negativity. There were so many things I wanted to tell the world. And there was two main things I wanted to say when I came out, because I thought, the one show going to be there. Look at my little 15 minutes of fame. I should probably say something important. And I remember thinking, right, I want to tell people that you shouldn't let other people's opinion, and that's the word, opinions of your ability, decide what you want to do in life. Because at the end of the day, it's their opinion, right? And they don't know what you like. I grew up in Zimbabwe. There is no ocean, and all the water has crocodiles in it, And I believed that this one was possible. And the other thing I wanted to tell everyone was, actually, we're all far, far more physically and mentally capable than we give ourselves credit for. And I think if we go out there and push ourselves, who knows what you can do. That's what I wanted to tell the world. Unfortunately, I came out of John O'Groats Harbour and just cried like a baby, and talked about my beard a lot. So that was there. I did finish my swim in 135 days, 4.5 months at sea, and that was the final route I had. And I think I have two messages for people today. And the first message is, we are, as I said, a lot more capable than we think we are. And if you have a big idea, don't let other people get in your way, because you're always going to get the sofa surfers sitting there telling you can't do something. And the second, and probably the most important bit of advice I want to tell people is, pee doesn't stop jellyfish stings. Thank you very much.